So, hello everyone, and we have another one with us tonight. Great. So, hello Haitham again, and for the person who joined us, I don't want to say your name in a incorrect way, so please let me know how you pronounce your name.
I changed it to a easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
I'm
can call me
familiar
Ben
with
Shirat.
Yeah, the first one was too long.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, but Ben, I'm familiar with that name.
That's good.
Okay. So I think we have NG too, but hopefully NG Nevin, hopefully I'm pronouncing the name correctly. So please correct me if I'm wrong. Do I pronounce your name Nevin NG?
Inge, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, but can you please let me know how to pronounce your name correctly?
Inge.
Ian.
Inge.
Okay, is it a Dutch name?
Yes, it's coming from Ingeborg.
Ingeborg. Oh, okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. It's
yeah.
quite difficult to pronounce, eh? Most people are saying
Yeah.
Inge or Inge or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah, I thought in Dutch it would be Inge.
Yeah, it's okay if you pronounce it like this. Indeed.
It's easier for me.
Yeah, but your name is not that easy for me neither, so.
It's Muwafaq.
Muwafaq, there you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. I should
Perfect.
always go by my last name. It's so easy, Ayadi. But
Yeah, that's
somehow,
true.
yeah, I always use my first name. Ayadi will be just fine.
Yeah, Neven as well. It's quite simple.
Yeah, and even is quite simple.
There we go. Yes.
Nice. So hello everyone for the 5th Open Office Hours, and tonight we will be talking about Module 5. This session will be recorded, and you can tell your teammates to watch the recorded session when it's posted on Ref. And we're gonna start by what is the Module 5 about. So I will head back to the course content and into the introduction. So last week we were talking about developing your leadership signature. And that would be relevant for this week, especially for the capstone project assignment, because that will be reflected in the way you are handling your organization and handling your challenge. This week we will focus about the AI governance. So this week is not technical, it's not really about knowing artificial intelligence algorithms, services. I know in the assignments I always ask for more. Can you please name a model name, or can you please let me know a little bit about your data? This week is more of what you as a leader should do in your own organization, and it's not tech heavy or tech related. So you will have major learning outcomes, which is identifying mechanism for risk management and mitigation. And as you know, in any project, this is not specific to AI. In any project, you need to identify your risk and mitigate against bad things that can happen. But it can be a little bit tricky in AI because sometimes we do not know in advance. So let's take an example of a website. I don't think developing a website can go wrong at this point. Maybe in the year 2000, 2005, 2010. But now we have robust processes to follow, robust technologies, and people who are industry experts that you can refer to. So I don't see how this can go wrong. Now, for the for building complex websites like ERP, CRM, and many organizations are too big. And when you build a one-stop shop for all of their requirement, it can be challenging, but still you can foresee most things in advance. Yet in a research and development or innovation project, you can have ideas, you can have projections, you can see what, for example, competitors have done, but it's until this point, it's still not that mature. Now, to be fair to many companies now are very AI matured, and they know what risk they are going to face during the life cycle of AI product, and they know how to mitigate against that. But that's not the case for most organizations. Now, the development of AI products and AI companies is rapidly growing, and now we have a lot of industry experts, but what I'm always hearing that there is not enough of them, and that's the challenge. So until this point, especially with governmental organization, until this point, they struggle. Oh, we have 1 or 2 people in the waiting room. Should admit. And yeah. So Richard, I'm seeing you are trying to connect, I think, from 2 different devices. I admitted one. The second one, I'm not couldn't admit it. But if you are with us,
yeah, I'm on one my only iPad, so I don't know what the other thing is for. So I don't.
I don't know either. It says Richard Watkins is joining, but there is no button to admit or not.
Okay.
But the good thing you are with us tonight. So I was saying that few organizations around the world were successful to be AI mature. They know the risks in advance. They know how to mitigate against that, but it's not widespread as web development. Now, I was talking about governmental organization. It's still a big issue all around the world. For me, I work and live in Holland, near Amsterdam, and the government in here are very tech heavy. Everything is centralized, from your social security number, from your health insurance, from your salary. They can track down everything about you. It's good. And sometimes it's a bit scary because they can know everything. And I think comparing to many other countries, they are matured on that level. And since I work in a consultancy, the clients are most of them Dutch clients, and many of them are Dutch governmental agencies. And it's astonishing the technologies they are using. I didn't say they are. I think comparing to many other countries, they are matured. Also in the US, I think it differs from one state to another. Some states are having centralized systems, so it's easy to have IT systems that are centralized, whereas in other less developed countries, the systems are decentralized, and it takes days, months, and weeks to address specific things. If you want to go for something like a paperwork, or you want to navigate you want to open your own company, or you have taxes, it can take a long time. But in certain countries, it does not. For example, in Dubai, you can have your driver license within minutes. You can have your passport within minutes. You can have your residency within minutes. I think Dubai is #1 when it comes to technology. Now, why I'm talking about that? Because as AI leaders, you need always to put in mind that AI is data-based. There is no AI without data. And when we are talking about centralized systems and that can aggregate a lot of data, we are talking about better AI systems that can help us in the future. So you go to specific countries and they tell you the train will be delayed by 1 minute, or the bus will be delayed by 1 minute. Sometimes it can be 1 hour. It's frustrating, but at least you know it's going to be delayed by 1 hour. And that's AI systems running in the background for prediction, not necessarily, but all those devices, all those our data connected, it gives us AI leaders and data leaders and architects in those organizations the ability to provide better services. Now, why I'm talking about this topic is I was saying many governmental agencies around the world, they still not that AI matured or even data matured. So that's why I opened that axe, because governmental agencies, I know they can be very different from companies, but I wanted to give like positive examples about some countries when things are, for at least I'm seeing in comparison, they are positive. And that's me talking about identifying mechanism for risk management and mitigation. The mechanisms really differ from one place to another. It depends on what you are actually dealing with. A transportation company, it's not like a bank, and it's not like an insurance. So it depends on the context. And in here, I cannot give you an in-depth answer. Try to, for your capstone project, when you run into these kind of things, try to research your own topic, because in here I cannot give specific answers to all topics. Now, why this long introduction about the learning outcomes? It's because it's very heavily related to ethics and regulatory risk. If you have centralized system, when a company or a government can see all of our data, and we, as users, we can feel that we do not have a privacy anymore. And as an AI developer and AI leader, I should be happy because I have a lot of data to play with. But also, as an AI practitioner, sometimes it's a bit concerning to me how much power the data aggregators have. And the data aggregators can be, it's usually big tech. They are the biggest data aggregators, and some governments. I don't want to name them. Now, for example, in EU, you need to comply with GDPR. I'm not a lawyer, but at least when I use cloud services, they say we comply with this and that and this and that. And of course, you can tell it's a bit boring to me, but I need to know them, because a project can fail if we use a service, the cloud service that stores data, compute, made an API endpoint for the user. So the AI model will be sitting pretty in a data center somewhere around the world. And me as a user, I'm going to use that model. But how? Usually we use endpoints. So me, I will connect to, I don't know, I will be having my phone connecting to something. And that something is using AI. So the way to connect in the background is an endpoint. I know this is technical, so don't get bored by it, but your connection is defined by some regulations that we need to comply with. And they depend from one country to another and from one geographical location to another. If you are talking about EU, mostly GDPR. In the US, I know they have the CCPA, California Consumer Privacy Act. Yes, I said it right. And Singapore, they have another one. Other countries have other things. But even on the national level, sometimes you need to comply with national standards. I'm not the expert on the subject. And at this point, it's difficult to have those experts because you need to know different laws in different countries. But in big companies, what they have is a data officer working with an entire department for compliance and regulatory related subjects. So in here, it will be my same reflection. It totally depends on the project you are working on. And there is nobody that knows in advance all those answers until they research them. I want to say AI is still new, but actually it's not, because the applications are too many. But the way we are developing and consuming is still fairly, I would say, still not that mature. So when you develop a website, there are not too much things around it. But in AI, it will be like we are afraid of this and that and this and that, and all around the world, the regulations are being developed to protect us as users. Now, there is the other axe of the AI and ML expansion, and it's sometimes it seems not that impressive, and sometimes it seems a bit scary. So what happened in 2017 is DeepMind, which is now an Alphabet subsidy. Alphabet is the parent company of Google, and they developed an AI algorithm that can beat the board game Go. And Go is one of the toughest games for a computer to win. And then they made a huge leap, and they developed many other algorithms that can beat most of computer games. Well, that was an exponential growth. And many people said, oh, it will happen in 10 years. And then boom, we woke up in the morning and we were astonished. So the expansion is really big, and the regulations are not that fast, but they are promising. I think people putting legislation are doing their best, but sometimes, well, for example, when I hear in the Capitol hearing, when they bring a big tech CEO or they bring one of these subjects, the people that are leading those discussions will be like, what are you doing? So technology is rapidly growing. There are many positive intentions to keep up with that. But for leaders, it's up for leaders to enhance their pace around all of this. So in module 4, we talked about the implementation. In module 5, we are talking how to govern that implementation. Now we will go to explaining, this is one of the learning outcomes for module 5, explaining the social and organizational responsibility of leaders. We know in some countries, social media are reshaping those countries' policies using AI algorithms. And for me, I'm seeing a big difference in behavior between my generation and the generation 1 or 2 the generations that precedes me. And it's astonishing how their behavior was reshaped through social media. For me, I only have LinkedIn. By the way, we can connect on LinkedIn. I like to geek out about these subjects, and I do not use the rest of social media because it's very overwhelming. And it actually rewires your brain according to the feed that you have. And if you do not have it, but you are connecting with friends that they are having it, you will end up being and directly influenced by that, and you won't even realize. So as AI leaders, we need to sensitize the people about that. Now we have a lot of issues around consumerism, and people are shopaholic. I myself sometimes go down that rabbit hole, even though I don't use social media, but it's too much, it's everywhere. I want to buy that shoes because it looks really great with my outfit, and then I end up spending a couple of hundreds. Even though I feel that I'm aware of that. So you see all these discussions, it's really great to be reflected in the assignments. And we have many groups that in their submissions in the module 3, module 2, 3, and 4, I have seen that they are making that conversation. So now it's not about answering, and as a leader, it's not about putting bullet points, but to make the conversation. This is what we are lacking. So leaders will come with an agenda, with bullet points, and they will be like, we're gonna do this and that and this and that. It may be smart, it may be good, but people are looking to make a conversation. At least that's how I see it. It's up to you to tell me how you see it. So Now we have finished with the learning outcomes. Usually I should focus on the capstone project, but I think it's intrinsically related to this week content. If you have your own conversation with the content and then you talk about that with your group, I think that's the biggest step as a leader, is to make the conversation. I think the biggest danger is the discontinuity between the leaders and other leaders, and the leaders and their teams, because there is not that conversation. It's like very easy to be like, hey, let's yeah, I know my webcam is really bad. I usually connect with my phone, but to be like leaders, hey, let's for half an hour, half an hour is not enough, for 1 hour or two during each week, let's talk about these subjects and let's see how things are. You will gain the confidence of people around you, and you will be actually indirectly brainstorming new things, and you will be actually engaged in solving these pressing issues. And that's the purpose of the capstone projects, is to have those discussions as a group. It's not about having 100% mark or 70% mark. It's about the discussions that you will be having, and most of you are up the ladder and the hierarchy of your own organization. So I think you're already capable leaders, but you connecting among each other and having those conversations, that's the very beneficial one. And the biggest thing that can facilitate that is the weekly capstone project that I will go through briefly. So first question are, what are the processes or tools you will use to make individuals aware of the consequences of their actions toward others and themselves? If you are an AI engineer building an AI model, you should always keep in mind the welfare of yourself first, the people around you, and the society around you. Now, how to implement the process, that can be a little bit tricky, but I think if you are working in a Scrum team, you will have a Scrum Master and Product Owner, and they need a data officer, and they will oversight what's being developed. For me, I prefer the crisp DM Agile methodology, and it has 6 phases. It starts by business understanding, data understanding, feature engineering, model development, evaluation, and deployment. And in those 6 different steps, you have 6 different people with different responsibilities and expertise conversing among each other and going through the consequences of every phase. So I advise people to use the crisp DM methodology. It's much better than just having Kanban or Scrum. It depends also on the industry you are working on. I'm working mostly in software engineering, but I know in other industries they have different kind of processes. It's up to you in the capstone project to tell us about that. If it's not convincing, just add citations. If it's unclear, add citations, because usually I read the citations to understand a little bit the background of what project you are on. I've already seen, like, at least so far as a professional, between, I don't know, I think more than 30 AI projects. But still, I still can learn from you, especially when you add those citations to see how you are seeing things. Now, what data will be collected and how the data will be used. The data can be scrapped through internet, but be careful. You can always go to the link of the website and see add/robots.txt and see if that website allows you to scrape the data. You can buy the data from data aggregators. You can collect the data from your organization, and you need your employees' approval and consent. There are many ways, and how to use it actually depends on your project. So it's up for you as a group to tell us how you're going to be used that data. The other question is, how will you ensure that the tool and implementation comply with relevant privacy and regulation? And like I told you, if you are using cloud services, and the cloud services, when you, for example, store data, for example, for me, since I'm based in Holland, sometimes we need to store the data in data centers in Holland. You cannot go outside of the Netherlands or EU. It's mandatory, especially I'm in the financial services. Some data needs to stay here. Some other data it can be stored in data center in anywhere in the European Union because it complies with the GDPR. And some other data, for example, we are scraping data from the internet. We do not have intellectual property over that. Well, you can store it anywhere. And that's one of the ways to relevant for regulations around your project. And what we also do is masking the data. So if you have a bank account and you have the IBAN, for example, so I'm artificial intelligence, I'm data engineer, so I have a data engineering task. And when I see the data is masked, for the IBAN, it only keeps the last 4 digits. And so we do not know which customer is that. And this is one of the many examples. For the email too, they will only have the first letter of the email and other letters just to verify. But still the examples are too much and it depends on the project too. So mostly I would say, try to use cloud services. They are your best way because they have built-in features for everything almost. But if you are building something from your own, and it was my case with my previous employer, they were not heavy on using cloud technology. So I was implementing those algorithms to mask the data myself. So once I apply the algorithm, the data becomes private and only me, I can reverse engineer it and send the whole data, which is not masked. And for that, sometimes in a project, I know I have a contract, but within your contract, sometimes for a specific project, you will sign an NDA or something related to that. So they ensure when the audit team comes and they are doing the auditing stuff that we are compliant. And that happened several times. They will come to my team and they will be like, show us the code. What are you doing in the code? Show us the data, how the data is encrypted, how the data is masked. For us, we were successful as a team. I was working in the innovation team. Now with my current client, which is Nike, they are even more robust on that. Nothing will go at any step without the verification of the data officer. So the Scrum team have a full-time data officer that every time a data engineer or AI engineer do something, it will end up by him verifying if it's compliant or not. And this is costing organization all around the world a lot of money. And I don't think it's really affecting their performance. I think it's making them more transparent toward the consumers. Now, the last question, how will you ensure that your AI solution tool complies with ethical, security, and privacy standards? I know the third and fourth question are a bit similar, but like the fourth question is more about the ethical part and the security part. So for the ethical part, it's what I was talking about. The leader needs to have the conversation with their team, because engineers, they will be like, okay, I don't care. I will develop the model. I wouldn't say engineers do not care about that, but it's for them is a more tech challenge. So when you sit in a room and you chat about this in unscripted way, I think that's the healthiest thing for your team to adopt those ethics. If you're going to give them an online course, it will be next. And to be honest, I'm not an angel, and I do the next just to finish it because they are so boring. And I tell my managers, give us some time to discuss. It's better than give us like a quiz. I know the answers for the quiz, and I will just answer them immediately without, at least I feel it's wasting my time. But what does not feel wasting my time is to have that long, deep conversation. Now, I always refer back to myself for the examples because I work with a lot of other engineers, and most of them, they share my same concerns and my same opinions. Usually I'm the one who spiel them out loud. That's why I'm the lead learning facilitator, maybe for this course. But yeah, discussion is a key, and then you can have the online courses. And there are many organizations that if you are working with a bank, there are mandatory course for you to have and to finish and to sign on them. So you are ethically aligned with those ethical standards. For the security part, you have many security regulations. The names are too many. I'm not a security expert, but what I do is, at least in my team, whatever thing, it's even installing a library, we need to refer back to the security team, which make us lose weeks of time sometimes, and sometimes months. So that software we are using, a library we are using, even when we develop our own algorithm, sometimes the security team need to check that and tell us if it's compliant or not. Sometimes it gives a headache, but when the product works and it's scalable, then you will see the importance of that. Because if you do not comply with the security things, down the road, you're going to have problems. And that even happened to the big tech companies. Sometimes they are guilty from being too advanced. So they will be paying for being too advanced, because at that time, the regulation was not there and it just catch up. So also this will still answer very related to your own project. Every industry is different from the other, and every project is different from the other. So I hope my take for this week assignment was clear. And now the floor is yours. Let me know if you have any questions or you have a subject you want to chat about. Don't be shy.
Well, yes, thank you so much for the start of the talk. I am interested in this particular module,
Yeah.
particularly on the data regulations, because I negotiate technology and data analytics agreements.
Yeah.
And I try to protect my clients because typically it's vendors who are using AI solutions that we're using internally. And so we want to be able to make sure that they have the proper protections and follow, well, and this is where I'm getting to. I would say follow the proper data regulations, but I'm in the US and there's no federal, clear guidelines. And as you said before, it's state by state, and there are like no states that are on top of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So in that regard, we rely on, hey, we're two parties contracting with one another. And forgive me, I'm actually going to turn on my camera. We're two parties contracting with one another, which means that, hey, you and I, we both agree to abide by this. So my question is, if you were, for instance, in my position and you're trying to protect your company from a vendor using AI, what jurisdiction or what country do you think has the most protective regulations? I mean, if it was straight up data privacy with respect to personal health information, I'm going to GDPR, right? That's like the gold standard.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the same with AI. I know the European Commission just released some proposals on liability rules.
Yeah.
just last month. Maybe it's that.
Every
yeah, and maybe that's the answer. Maybe I continue to refer to GDPR and the rules that are coming out of the European Commission. Do you think it's the European Commission that's really kind of leading the way on establishing a standard for AI?
Yeah, you end up answering your own question in a very smart way.
It helps to talk out loud,
Yeah, exactly. That's are the conversations I was insisting on between a leader like yourself and the rest of his colleagues in the company. Because when you spiel it out loud, you will probably find it. And there is a small documentary. I don't know if you are familiar with the small clips of CNBC and Vox. Many YouTube channels have like 10 to 20 minutes small documentaries, and one of them is called Does Brussels Rule the World?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like immediately, okay, that's clickbait. That is actually true. Brussels is ruling the world through GDPR because the EU Parliament is placed in Brussels, which is like a neutral country, and whatever EU Parliament agrees on in Brussels, it will affect all European countries. But then you will be like, okay, but the US economy it's bigger and more powerful, and you still have Japan and China and previously Russia and the rest of the world. Why why Brussels is ruling the rest of the world? It's simply because if you are a big company, you will be selling your products in Europe. And if you are US based and you're already selling in the US and Europe, it's most probably you are selling your product all over the world. So what will you do? Be just compliant with the CCPA, for example, or you just immediately comply with the GDPR, which is more heavy than the CCPA. You will immediately comply with the GDPR. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you will use the European market, which is a very big market. And this is how Brussels is maybe the capital of regulations and economy, because nothing will go through from a company selling products or services unless it's GDPR compliant. So big tech and like 500 Fortune companies in the US, biggest concern is the GDPR. And one of the things that bothers them the most is like every month it changes, because the political movement in here, it's not that interesting, and a lot of actions like happen in the US. But these people are very serious about these kind of things, and they keep on updating. I remember when I was working for a French German investment bank, they would be like, oh, they changed the law again. And they will go through a nightmare, and they will do a revision for what we have done. But that enables them to sell their products all around the world without worrying about the rest of the world regulation, because they already have the toughest ones. And now American companies are forced to follow that. And this is one of the main reasons I see from the Brexit happening. Some people will be like, okay, UK will never leave Europe. Well, it will. And I said it will. And now have left Europe. And Ireland does not go by GDPR. So the Americans now, again, they are winning. Big tech are based in Ireland. And I have many of my fellow colleagues working now in Ireland, and it's a big talent exodus because it's too much regulation here in Europe. The subjects are not directly linked, but what many big companies, they will be like, okay, we're going to use UK and Ireland because of all nonsense, like EU is dictating all of this, and the world is dictating. I shouldn't use that, but that's what's actually happening on the field. Still, if I'm gonna recommend anything, and I'm no expert on the subject, I will be just go GDPR or base one of your business in Ireland if you can afford that.
I appreciate it. I had the feeling that was the case, but one of the reasons I'm taking this course is to learn if there are other sources out there that I'm just not aware of. But yeah, I appreciate that.
there are other sources. So I don't know what business you are in and what kind of loophole you need to navigate, but I have recommended it on the open office hours before to one of the students of this course, one of the learners, and I said, go to North Africa. It's, don't want to say it out loud, but it's privacy regulation and the rest of the things haven't. It's not heavy on this kind of matters because it's still developing. North Africa is still developing and the IT talent are really big. So if you put or invest time, of course, if your organization can afford it, it will be less headache if you go to North Africa because there is abundance of engineers and everybody is speaking English as a second or a third language. So if you develop your product there, it will be much quicker. And then if you wanted to sell it to EU countries, it will not be difficult because in North Africa, we are familiar with those regulations. And that's one of what many of EU organizations and companies are doing. They are going to the offshore, which is North Africa, and then they will tailor a solution to sell it back in EU and in the USA. So that's one of the things I have on top of my head. And there are other few countries, but I'm not an expert on those.
Thank you. I appreciate your insight.
My pleasure. So, guys, if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask them, or just let us know what you think about my conversation with Richard. I know I do not have the perfect knowledge of all the subjects, but at least I try to navigate with you your concerns. Well, in that case, thank you so much for being with us tonight, and see you next week in the last open office hours. Goodbye.
All right. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
Thank you. See you next time.
See you. Goodbye.